lovely people, my name is Nicole and today I want to talk about The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book is based very heavily on, I believe, just the Iliad, maybe also the Odyssey. I can't say for sure because I haven't read them yet. This particular adaptation of the story of Achilles is told through the lens of Patroclus, who is a supporting character in the Iliad. He's not really talked about in depth, but basically he is Achilles' best friend. They met when they were about 10, grew up together from then on, were trained together by Chiron, and went to fight in the Trojan War together, and then things happened that were motivations, and it's weird because I feel like I can't say certain things that are like things that happened in the Iliad, which like it's been out for 2,000 years, 3,000 years, so like normally I wouldn't worry about spoiling it because it's also like major plot points in this book. I don't want to say anything in case people like me who haven't read the Iliad are going to read this book, and I don't want to spoil things. Things happen that are motivations for other things that are major events in Greek mythology. So this mainly just focuses on Homer's telling of the story of Achilles, so it doesn't have the like main story that Achilles is kind of known for, which is the running Achilles heel thing, but it mainly focuses on the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, because in this adaptation it is interpreted as a romance and it is so good. So I went into this kind of a little bit worried because I had heard a lot of people on Tumblr talking about it. It's sort of in the same crowd of people who talk about like the Foxhole Court and the Raven Cycle and Captive Prince, which is another series I haven't read but I need to. And I was excited but apprehensive to read this. I was in the bookstore and I actually texted my friend like while I was in line to get it. I texted my friend Helen, put a link to her in the doobly-doo. Good? Yes? Should I get it? And she responded very enthusiastically. So I picked it up. I was a little worried because I wasn't sure whether it was actually queer representation or if it was just sort of vaguely hinted at and people on Tumblr just sort of ran with that. I needn't have worried because within 50 pages I texted Helen and I said, "Holy shit, this is so gay." It's very, very gay. These boys are extremely homosexual. So yeah, if you are looking for some representation and you like Greek mythology, this has gotcha, as long as the representation you're looking for is gay men, because that's all this is. So I really, really loved this. I thought the writing was absolutely beautiful. The interpretation of some of the classic mythology tales that I'm familiar with was so great. It told some stories that you just kind of hear and pick up throughout life because a lot of Greek mythology is so heavily like ingrained into our culture, and I learned more about how some of those stories were like intertwined. My main issues that I had with this were not this book's fault. They weren't like Madeline Miller's fault. They were the fault of ancient Greece and Homer, like the original stories. So those issues that I had were, I had some issues with getting annoyed with Achilles at times. I had a lot of issues with the treatment of women because, hey, surprise, apparently women weren't treated well in ancient Greece. Like, at all. And then the third thing is the entire like basis of the Trojan War is absolutely ridiculous. And these men are absolutely ridiculous and don't seem to understand that people are dying. No one really cares about your honor and like your pride because you're killing people just for glory. Just basically you started a 10-year-long war for shits and gigs. Why? This is why women should rule the world. But yeah, those were really my main issues. Like I said, not Madeline Miller's fault. I gave this a 4.5 stars. I loved the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. I thought at times it wasn't necessarily like ideal, but even when some of the turns of the relationship weren't necessarily things that I would have done, or I may have done things differently, I still like understood what was going on and it made sense to me, and I could understand why the characters made choices that they did, at least most of them, in spoilery section I will get into my issues with Achilles, but I think I preferred the first half of the book just because it was more focused on the relationship and less on the war side of things. But I do appreciate the fact that once we did get into the war part of the story, it told the story of the war and like it described what was going on, but it wasn't like a war book. Because you know, there are those books that are written for the purpose of being about wars, and this has a huge war as a part of it, but that's not the main story that's being told. The main story that's being told is this relationship and these characters' evolutions and their journeys. But like I said, I did really, really like this, and honestly, I think that the quality of the writing and just the storytelling in general was enough to allow me to put aside some of my issues with the time period. So I definitely recommend this if you like queer stories or Greek mythology or Greek mythology. I absolutely loved it. So I'm about to get into spoilery stuff. Like I said, I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. So if you have not read this book, please go read it. I highly recommend it, and then come back and we can talk more in depth. Okay, so for spoilery stuff, I got extremely frustrated with Achilles, and actually a lot of the higher up men, like Agamemnon, I think, is that his name? Is that how you say it? The main king guy. I kind of just wanted to go up to them and slap them in the face and be like, hey, not all about you. No one really cares about your pride and your honor. People are dying. Get off your ass and help. Because they were frustrating. They were very stubborn and didn't seem to want to listen to reason, and I wanted to punch them in the face. I think probably my favorite part of the book was reading them training with Chiron, and maybe that's just because I grew up in love with the Percy Jackson series, and so I was already really familiar with Chiron as a teacher, and I loved seeing him just sort of in his original setting, I guess, instead of the more modern setting. But I thought just his teaching methods and how he was sort of a little bit of like a McGonagall style teacher, where like he was strict where he needed to be, but also really good at knowing how to motivate his students in the way that they need. And like, if you really care about what you're doing, then they're pretty much the best teacher ever. So basically Chiron's pretty much the best teacher ever. The historical fact. I also just felt like that was kind of the best part when it came to their relationship. Their relationship had its ups and downs. Like I said, when I was probably 50 pages in, I think I was almost exactly 50 pages in, I texted my friend and I was just like, this is like the gayest thing I've ever read. And that's saying something. And then like 10 pages later they kissed for the first time, and I was like, yep, that's pretty gay, guys. It was a little bit frustrating that it took them a solid like 5 years, I think, after they first kissed to finally get together. But I mean, there were a lot of frustrating things about their relationship. It was an adorable relationship and I fully support it. But I mean, there was that moment when Patroclus went to go sleep with Achilles' wife. Is that something that's like from the Iliad? Cause why? Why would he do that? I mean, like, I get that he was like upset and everything, but why? Also, I kind of expected that to come back to bite him, cause I mean, he slept with his boyfriend's wife. That seems like the kind of thing that in most books would be something that would come back around and be a major plot point, but it was never mentioned again. Achilles' wife was never mentioned again outside of in the context of his son. Speaking of his son, what the fuck? I don't know if it was just me, but I legitimately got some like Joffrey Lannister vibes from him. Not good. And I kind of wanted to repeatedly punch him in the face. Especially when he was like, well, I'm not gonna like sullied my father's grave by putting some servant on there. And he's like, I know what my father would want. It's like, okay, you literally never met him. These people have been living with him for the past 10 years. I think they know what he wants more than you do. I mean, he was just kind of a little shit. And I may or may not have cheered a little bit when we heard he died. Yeah, I really liked that once they sort of got settled on the battle camp area. You know, Achilles was off doing his thing, fighting, and Patroclus went with him a couple times, but, you know, it was kind of clear that that's not where he was best suited. But I love that he sort of found his place. He was the you know, helping with the medicine and the healing. And I loved the scene when he was walking with Achilles and Patroclus was like waving to everyone and knew everyone by name. And it was this fascinating contrast between, you know, Achilles is supposed to be sort of the golden boy, you know, the one who everyone knows and loves, but everyone knows him in this very sort of distant way. But Patroclus, they knew him as a friend and they like genuinely cared about him. And I feel like it's an interesting parallel between the end when Achilles was sort of trying to fulfill that role of like epic hero, but he was being super dramatic about it and wouldn't actually help anyone. And Patroclus was the one who was like, let's solve this problem. I'm gonna go out for you and actually help the people. It was very much like Achilles was sort of the moral support and Patroclus was the one who was actually there with them, helping them in ways that they actually needed. It's the kind of thing where while reading it, I got very, very caught up in it. I didn't want to put it down and I got very like swept into the world, but now that I'm like setting it down and thinking about it like piece by piece, I'm finding a lot of issues that I had with it, which I think just goes to show how strong the writing was, that I was sort of, even if I noticed these issues, I was willing to sort of just like brush them aside just because I loved the writing so much and I was so caught up in the story. And a lot of the issues I had were, like I said earlier, issues with just like ancient Greek culture or issues with the original Iliad story, or things that I don't know if they're issues with this book or with the Iliad. But like I said, I did really, really like this. I gave it 4.5 stars, which is pretty dang close to 5 stars. I would have given it 5 stars if it weren't for those little issues, and I would have normally in any other book taken off more stars for that, except it's not Madeline Miller's fault, so I don't feel like I should penalize her for that. But yeah, please tell me what your thoughts on this book were, because I am just really interested in talking to people about it, because I thought it was pretty good, and I know a lot of people on Tumblr really, really love it. So yeah, talk to me about it in the comments. Give me thoughts and questions and just emotions. Let me know what you think. I love you, and I will see you later.